Nutrition Hero Podcast. Igniting both the art and the science of functional medicine. Here's your host, Dr. Brad Watts.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Nutrition Hero Podcast. And I have a special guest here today, Dr. David Minkoff. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you spending time with us today. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. It's late afternoon and I'm done with my work and we can just chat.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. And it's a Friday, no less. You're spending time with us on a Friday. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Well, I'm interested to talk with you today. Somebody that not only has had their own journey with health, as I understand, but somebody that's been laying it down for many years and showing people the ropes, how they can live a more optimal lifestyle for optimal health. And I just got to ask, how did you get into wellness when so many other people in a medical community are into pathology and that's it? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because I did a lot of years of regular medicine. I did pediatrics, and then I did a career in infectious disease, and then I did a career in emergency medicine, and I did a neonatal intensive care director, and I was in the middle of an emergency medicine career, and my wife got sick, and the answers that she was getting, I didn't know the right answer, but I knew that what they were telling her wasn't right. Like it didn't make sense to me. She had gotten introduced to Jeffrey Bland. This is in the middle 90s, and started going to seminars. Jeffrey is probably one of the smartest guys I ever met in my life. You know, he's a photographic memory, can read at 2,000 words per minute. I mean, he's just like they don't build him like that anymore. And I think he has the largest collection of medical journals in the world, except for libraries. And he would go through these journals and learn stuff and then go do seminars, which were brilliant. And anyway, my wife's a nurse, and she got introduced to him somehow and started going to his seminars. And she says, "You got to come hear this guy. This guy is really smart and you can learn a lot." And I was interested in health and fitness, at least for myself. I got into doing Ironman triathlon. So I wanted to optimize my own health. And I went to hear one of his seminars, and it was just like, wow, this guy's smart, nutritional biochemistry. And I loved it. So in the middle of that, she decided to have the mercury taken out of her teeth because mercury's bad and you shouldn't put it in your teeth. And she went to a dentist who didn't know how to take it out. And he drilled out, 12 or 14 mercury fillings. It spilled all over her body. She got sick. And she was seeing different doctors for thyroid and for her liver. And then one day she got weakness of her arm. And so she was being told things, to take medicines or drugs that just was like scared me that my wife would be on this stuff. 3 young kids. So she owns a home healthcare nursing business. She's a registered nurse. And one day a guy moved in the same sort of office complex that she was in. And on his marquee, it said natural dentistry. And I went to pick her up one night, and he was coming out to his car. So I stopped him and introduced myself, and it's like, "What's natural dentistry?" Like dentistry, So he said, "We have a different view of dentistry than regular dentists in that we wouldn't do most dentists have this idea that the mouth isn't really part of the body and that you could do things in the mouth that you would never do in the body, like put mercury in the body." Mozart, I think, died from a mercury injection trying to cure syphilis. We don't do that anymore because everybody knows that mercury is very toxic.
Yeah, that was the wrong guess.
Right. So he, if you take a filling, like one filling, it's about 500 milligrams, half a gram, and you ground it up real fine. You put it in a 10-acre lake, and then you went fishing, and caught the fish in that lake and had the fish analyzed for mercury content, if the EPA checked those fish, they would put a mercury advisory, a fish advisory on that lake. Like, you can't eat the fish.
Wow.
So that's one filling in 10 acres. You know, what's the square foot of a human body? Maybe a meter squared,
Yeah.
1.7 meters squared, something
Wow.
like that. Not very much. And so you have 12 fillings and you take a high-speed drill. And of course, mercury at room temperature is liquid.
Hmm.
It boils at 110 degrees. So you take a high-speed drill and you drill it out and you aerosolize it and it goes everywhere. And it went everywhere to her, and she was mercury toxic. So I tell the dentist, so he's telling me, and he said, you know, the other thing is, if a surgeon is doing, if someone has severe abdominal pain and you suspect that they've got a perforated bowel or a necrotic bowel, you know, bowel that's dying, and he goes in there and he sees areas where the circulation to the bowel is not there, and that you have dead tissue, you have to take it out. You know, you would have to take a portion of that bowel out. If you left it in, the person would die. If he runs across a toe that's gangrenous, like the blood supply is no longer going to that toe, you have to cut the toe off, because you'll die, because the infection in there will get into the body and it will kill the person. So he said, dentists operate on infected teeth before they kill the teeth when they do a root canal, because they kill the blood supply and they kill the nerve and they leave it in, but it's infected. So he said no other area of medicine would ever do that, because you're leaving in a dead, gangrenous, really infected organ. So he said that's natural dentistry. And I don't do those things. I do other, you know, I try to do things more compatible with biology, with life.
Right.
So I said, listen to this story, because I was not happy with my wife that she got her mercury taken out, because she was perfectly fine. And he said, oh, so I tell him the story, and he said, oh, she's mercury toxic. But there's no one around here. I'm in Clearwater, Florida. It's 1995. He said, there's no one here that knows anything about this or understands this or anything. He says, you got to go to Seattle. There's a guy there. He teaches doctors on how to do this, and you better go there so that you can figure her out. So I do that. I go there and I start doing his courses, and I learn about this stuff, and I come back and I'm all fired up, and I check her out according to what he said, and she's mercury toxic. And I do the program on her. And in 4 or 5 months, all her symptoms go away. Her Hashimoto's went away, and her liver enzyme elevation went away, and her neuropathy went away. And we have friends that are watching this, and they're like, hey, this is pretty good. They start calling me, you know, I've got rheumatoid arthritis, or I've got ulcerative colitis. One guy called me, says, I got colon cancer. You know, can you help me? And I said, I don't know. I've got one success,
right?
And I don't know. But I was working in the emergency room, and it's shift work. So it's, 7 in the morning or 7 at night, or 7 at night, 7 in the morning, 3, sometimes 4 shifts a week. And I had some time in the afternoon. I said Tuesday afternoon, and in her nursing office, she had a extra room. So I said, I'll set up in there on Tuesday afternoons, and you come in and I'll see if I can help you. And I wasn't charging anybody, because I wasn't sure I knew what I was doing.
Sure. That makes sense.
We're playing. So anyway, I started to get results. I started to get results, and then I got really into it, and she got into it too, because she was my assistant. And we started going all over. So we went to, we're like, who knows what they're doing? Who's got another approach to standard medicine? And so we went all over the place, at least one weekend a month. We were at some kind of a seminar, learning from guys who had figured this out before, and they had a niche and they learned it, and we started doing that. And the thing just, it exploded, literally. I mean, within a few months, we really needed some space. And so there was an office next to it. We took the office. Pretty soon that was full. Then we moved to where we are now. Now we have 3 buildings. We have 50 staff. It just grew because we got results with people, and just having more fun than you could have, because it's really fun to it's sort of it's detective work. These people are sick. There is a reason. If you patiently explore what it is, at one point they were fine and then they weren't fine, and what is wrong with them, you can find out. And like now, our average patient has seen 13 doctors, about 85%, and they come from all over the world, literally.
Mm.
Uh, about 85% of them, we can fix them. We can
Mhm.
do the right thing, debug them, figure out what's wrong, and then they get better, and then they're happy, and then I'm happy, and then they go on their way. So that's what I'm up to.
I love it. I love the approach. I like the attention to detail, and the fact that you scaled it is pretty cool. So that like a regional wellness center is a rare thing right now. And so good on you for doing that. I like that.
Thank you. Along the way, like with this mercury thing,
Mm-hmm.
when I first learned how to do this, he was having people take 14 supplements,
Mm.
which most people couldn't take.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to look around, and I met a biochemist, and we started to experiment with, could we get products that were nutritional to help detoxify people?
Mm.
Because I had been certified in chelation, and we were doing IV,
Mm-hmm.
EDTA or DMPS. And we found that a fair number of people would, after the treatment, after the IV treatment, they'd be holding their back, like holding their kidneys, because it was too much, too strong.
Yeah.
So I was trying to see, could we do this another way, or could we complement that with something that was less toxic? And we came up with this product called Metal Free. So I started a nutrition company called Body Health. And Metal Free is very unique for heavy metal detox. And it's been around since probably 1999. I used it on her, and it detoxified her mercury. And so, thousands of practitioners have used it. Millions of bottles have been sold. And now we have like 25 products. So we do a lot of other stuff. But that's the other thing I'm involved in, is really research on how to optimize. What can you give somebody that will really help them to get better, and help practitioners too, to make available products that are really going to make a difference in their products, in their patients.
That's pretty cool. With one of the things I know that you like to talk about is genetics, and how you can optimize your genetic expression in this crazy world of chemicals that we're living in right now. That detoxification that you're talking about when it comes to mercury, there's a whole world of genetic predispositions that either are going to help or hurt that type of a scenario. What has been your most recent exploration in genetics? Like, what's your focus right now? What's the most fun thing for you to focus on?
Well, the genetic thing is interesting. I come from a long line of ancestors that all died from heart attacks.
Same.
Great grandfather, grandfather, father. My brother's alive, but he's had three stints and then 4 bypasses. And so when I did my genetics, I have the same genetics they do. And I always had a different lifestyle than the rest of my family. I was always interested in athletics and competition, and in diets and in supplements. And so I don't have those problems. But when I do my genetics, I've done them with 3 or 4 different companies, hoping they would look better each time I did it. But they don't. They're terrible, terrible. And so I think that I don't focus very much on genetics. I don't even do genetic testing on people.
Okay.
Because I think the epigenetic factor is way more important. And
Yeah.
we can usually modify that, or we could work with that, so that, because otherwise they come in with this fixed idea of, I have MTHFR, I've got a methylation defect, but so does 35% of the population.
Right.
And until 10 years ago, nobody cared about it, and people still got better. Like some people come in, it's like, they'll come to me and they'll say, I have this genetic abnormality and I don't make this enzyme, and that's the reason I'm the way I am, and too bad. And like, I just throw all that out the window, because I find it's very rare that is such a significant factor. My early career, I was a pediatrician. And I went to UC San Diego, and one of the big areas in that in that program at that time was this subspecialty called dysmorphology. And so the world's expert was there, and he was a fun guy, and we liked to take rotations with him because he was fun. And so we would see all these kids that were funny, the FLKs, funny looking kids. And some of them had actual genetic abnormalities. But what I learned from that is if you've got one of these big bad things, you've got three, chromosome number 21s, or you've got maple syrup urine disease or Tay-Sachs or one of these things, well, you find out pretty quick in those kids because they're sick early and they're super severe. And sometimes you can modify things and a lot of times you can't. But most of us that have made it through infancy and childhood, our genetics are pretty okay. And we all have our strong points and weak points, but usually we're going to survive as long as we pay attention to the important things. Like, what are you eating? And are you getting some sunshine? And are you sleeping? And are you managing your stress? Like the real simple things.
Yeah.
And if people do that, they can often unwind whatever, bad things they've done, either intentionally or unintentionally.
Very cool.
In their life.
I appreciate that as well, because I think there's a space for genetic testing, and I also think there's a space for common sense that says, hey, just eat what you're supposed to eat, right? Like, don't do dumb things, okay? Like logic. So there's that. Being that you are in Florida, and right now, I'm sure it's not as bad as it will be in like August, but the humidity content tends to be pretty high in Florida. One of the things you see is the mold exposures and that type of thing, and how it influences people from an epigenetic perspective. Have you had any experience with that with your patient base in Florida?
Tons of mold experience. I did Richie Schumacher's courses. I'm certified in mold. I've done lots of expert testimony for patients about mold or for mold illness. And a lot of people come here because we do a lot of mold. Gotcha. A lot of people come here aren't even from Florida. They may be from somewhere else where there's humidity. I even got some mold patients from Colorado where it's kind of dry, but they still have mold. So, yeah, I think mold is a huge factor, and it's really one of these things that if you have it and you don't fix it, you probably will never get better. There's a couple things on the top of my list that people who aren't getting better, they've got either dental issues that haven't been discovered or they've got mold. Those are my two worst things. The Lyme patient that never gets better has one of those two things. The chronic fatigue patient, they have one of those two things. And I have one now that's very interesting. In fact, this afternoon, I just saw them back. They live in Florida, in South Florida. So they drive up here 4 hours to see me. And I started work with both husband and wife were sick. They both have headaches and brain fog and fatigue and burning skin and all kinds of symptoms. And when I first saw them, they tested for mold and they had mold. And he's a contractor. So I said, you guys got to clean out your house, because if your house isn't cleaned out, you will never get better. So he says, okay, he goes home and he had an add-on room. He demolished the room. They found mold all over the place. He cleaned it out. They went through the house. They thought it was okay. They come back 3 months later. I still test them for mold. I said, it's not done. And they're no better. Okay. They've done a lot of treatment. They're no better. So, okay, go back. Okay. And they did that, and they went back and they couldn't really find anything. And then a couple months later, they called me and they said, we found it. They unzipped by accident their sleep number bed mattress cover.
Oh, no.
Yes. The bladder was full of mold. So they're sleeping on it every night. It's not detected by the ERMI test. Some of these tests where you test for mold particles, it wasn't being, they couldn't find, it didn't come up.
Goodness. And
then they went on Google and they did searched images for mold contamination in mattresses, and they found that Tempur-Pedic beds people have put pictures up
Yeah.
because, you sleep, you perspire,
Yeah.
it gets wet,
Makes sense.
and it makes sense. I'd
Yeah.
never seen it before. I mean, I've been doing mold for a long time. I'd never seen that before. And I saw them back today, and they're starting to feel better, and I'm not getting mold on them anymore, and they're going to get better.
Yeah.
But this is one of those things where, even in my own office, this was prior to me knowing this, but I have a room off the patient line areas where I would review charts at night, go through laboratory reports.
Mhm.
And I found that when I was going in there, after about 45 minutes, my eyes would burn and my throat would be scratchy.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, I'm just coming down with something. So I'd go home. And then when I got home, all the symptoms would go away. So this goes on for a few weeks. And I thought, maybe there's mold in this thing. I have a really good nose for mold, but I didn't smell anything. So I called the best mold guy down here and I said, come check out our building. And he went through the building and he said, I don't see anything.
No.
And they got humidifiers and they got all these things that they test with. And he said, I don't think that's what's bothering you. Okay, fine. So I go a few more weeks, scratchy throat, called another guy. He goes through the building. I don't see any mold. He said, let's do this. Let's walk around the building together. So we take a walk around the building, and right outside the wall where I'm getting the symptoms, he said, look at the sprinkler heads. They're misdirected. They're going in instead of out. He goes to his truck, he gets a crowbar, we peel off the outside siding. It's black mold for 25 feet from the ground, 5 feet up. It was coming through the wall.
Wow.
So we did all the remediation for that. And then he came in and he had this sort of vinegar solution that he fogs the building with so that and then the room is fine. So what I tell people is if I detect mold in you, there is mold somewhere. It might be in your office. It might be if you live in your car, it might be in your car, but it's in your house otherwise. And if your mold guy doesn't find it, then you find another mold guy till you find it, because it is sneaky, but they never get better without it. They just never get better. So I think that's important.
I think that's important too. I think that that one story is going to help a lot of people on this podcast. So thank you for telling that. I'm going to include links to where the listeners can find you. Okay. And I'm also going to include, are your products on your site, or is that a different site as well?
It's a different site. The company is called Body Health. So it's bodyhealth.com.
On it. Okay.
And there's hundreds of videos on there, and there's lots of information on there. It's great. It's a great site, and the products are great. So
very cool.
My practice is lifeworkswellnesscenter.com, and the products are bodyhealth.com.
All right. Beautiful. Doctor, I appreciate you spending time with us here today, and thank you for sharing some of your experience. Very valuable. So we appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having me, and I really enjoyed it.